Hello and welcome to this India Today special, where we are bringing you a very special broadcast remembering Ratan Tata. That's right. On a day when an iconic figure has been laid to rest, we'll pay a special tribute. Among those who will be joining us to talk about the compassionate capitalist, as we are calling it, is the one and only Narayan Murthy. He too will pay homage, and we'll have plenty of others giving us a sense into the life and times of Ratan Naval Tata. You're with the news today. But tonight, our top story. India has bid farewell to one of its great sons, Ratan Naval Tata. The iconic industrialist and philanthropist's last rites were held with full state honors today in Mumbai, a city that was very dear to him. Ratan Tata was laid to rest, wrapped in a tricolour. Family, friends, employees, admirers from all walks of life gathered to bid farewell to India's iconic industrialists. All of them were united in grief, mourning the loss of the gentle giant of India Inc. Jimmy Naval Tata, Ratan Tata's brother, paid his last tributes in Mumbai. His half-brother, Noel Tata, also paid homage. Among those who arrived to pay tribute were a range of politicians: Union Home Minister Amit Shah, Maharashtra Chief Minister Eknath Shinde, Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis, Uddhav Thackeray, Sharad Pawar, and many others. Business leaders including Mukesh Ambani and Kumar Mangalam Birla were also present during the last rites. Mr. Tata's pet dog, a stray he adopted 11 years ago, also met his best friend for one last time. We'll have special tributes being paid to Ratan Tata right through this show. But first, take a look at the life and times of Ratan Naval Tata.
The year was 1962, when a young man of 25 entered the offices of the National Radio and Electronics Company Limited at Andheri in Mumbai. 9 years later, he was the director in charge of the company, and a decade later, the chairman of Tata Industries. In 1991, he succeeded J.R.D. Tata as the chairman of the Tata Group. The youth was Ratan Tata, fresh out of Cornell University, armed with a bachelor's degree in architecture, more than ready to enter and learn as he would rise from the lowest rungs in one of India's most hallowed industrial houses. Today, Tata's contribution to India's largest conglomerate and to the nation's economy was second to none. He was on a pedestal very few industrialists in the country were able to climb. Though he had the magic surname, young Ratan had a tough act to follow, that of his predecessors Jamsetji Tata, Dorab Tata, and finally the iconic J.R.D. Ratan Tata took on the challenge, and by the time he retired in December 2012, the Tata Group's financials spoke loud about the impact he had. During his tenure, the group's revenues grew manifold, totaling over $100 billion in 2011-2012.
Been recognized all over the world as an enterprising country.
Ratan Tata identified the opportunity which the liberalization of the Indian economy provided and began restructuring the Tata Group in 1991. Under his leadership, the group acquired high-profile international brands like Tetley Tea, Daewoo, Chorus Steel and Jaguar Land Rover. He was also the man behind Tata Nano, the company's small car project, which he hoped would give wheels to the middle class. The journey, however, was not easy and tested his mettle at every turn. First, he had to deal with the satraps, a legacy left by his uncle J.R.D. Tata. Rusi Modi lorded over Tata Steel. Darbari Seth was the final voice at Tata Tea and Tata Chemicals. Ajit Kerkar was the force behind Indian hotels, and Nani Palkhiwala was the man behind ACC. Each considered these companies their fiefdoms and looked at Ratan Tata as another outsider they had to deal with. 6 years after taking over as the Tata Group chairman, all four of them had resigned. Ratan also wielded the broom on several companies. He exited cement, textiles and cosmetics and focused his energies on software, telecom, finance and retail. Finally, after serving as group chairman for 21 years, Ratan Tata retired in December 2012. He had spent 50 illustrious years with the Tata Group. An avid aviator, Tata was awarded the Padma Vibhushan, the country's second highest civilian honour, by the Government of India in 2008. The humble, reclusive industrialist was also known for his philanthropic work. Till his death, he served as the chairman of the Tata Trusts, which are amongst India's oldest non-sectarian philanthropic organizations that work in several areas of community development. The proudest moment for him, perhaps, in recent years was bringing Air India back home to the Tata fold, and while he aimed to touch the skies, his other love was dogs. Doors of even the Bombay house were open to strays all day long.
Now, among those who I spoke to today, paying fulsome tribute to Ratan Tata and what made him special, is another iconic industrialist philanthropist, Infosys founder Narayan Murthy. Listen in to what he had to say. Good to have you on the show, Mr. Narayan Murthy. It is a tragic moment, though, Ratan Tata's passing away. Your tribute, sir. What did Ratan Tata, according to you, represent?
I think he was a human being which had lots of compassion. You just now spoke about animals and all of that. He had concern for the poorer sections of the society. He had huge concern for his employees. He was very courteous whether he was speaking to a young admirer or a top industrialist. He was very patriotic. And several things that he did, for example, his starting of the manufacturing of nano car was purely based on patriotic feeling that we Indians too can produce motor cars. And so I would say that he was a great human being, very humble, very easy to hold conversation. I had taken my daughter in 1999 to meet him because she had taken a course on leadership in her undergraduate year. And Sudha and we took her to meet Ratan. And he had given her just 1 hour, but he spent 3 hours. He answered every question. He talked about what leadership is all about, why you have to take tough decisions, which he had demonstrated in plenty when he took over from JRD, and why there has to be compassion for the poorer sections of the society. You know, why you have to have high aspirations, why you have to compare yourself with the best in the world. So it was a very good lesson on leadership for Akshata, who was, at that time, would just reach 20 or 19 or something like that. It was a wonderful thing. I invited Ratan to open the Jamsetji Tata Hall. And he called me and said, look, your TCS is your competitor. How is it that you are inviting me? I said, no, Jamsetji was, had transcended companies. He was a patriotic Indian. Therefore, for us, we don't think of Jamsetji as, belonging to a group that was competing with us. And he came. Of course, he was by nature, he was somewhat shy. He would not want to give long speeches. He gave a short speech, and he was also surprised that we had invited him to inaugurate that because, once again, the logic was that TCS was our biggest competitor. They were number one, we were number two. And I think at that point in time, we were, kind of, if you remove the General Electric business, we were probably the same or slightly higher than TCS. So he was a little bit surprised, and he came. He spent a lot of time with our with Infosians, and every moment of his visit was a a show. I wouldn't use the word show. A demonstration of his humility, of his patriotism, and of his kindness.
The post-91 generation, yourself, Ratan Tata, the audacity of ambition to go big, is that what defined him? Or the fact that while having this audacity of ambition, this heart of steel, he also had a heart of gold, a heart of velvet, if you want to call it. So, velvet in steel.
Tatas have always had a heart of gold. And the beauty of it is that Ratan came in, and Ratan, in fact, I would say, added value to what was already an extraordinary initiative. So, and on the issue of the global thing, there are divided opinions. After all, he is as much of a human. He was as much of a human being as you and me. So we do certain things extremely well, certain things not so well. So there are divided opinions about the foray of the Tata companies into the export market, whether it was British Steel or whether Jaguar, etc. But I think the beauty of that is, it is now coming into to full flowering because Jaguar is becoming very popular in India. It is becoming popular in the Far East. So the market is now taking off. And therefore, I would say that he was a visionary. He thought very far into the future. And I am positive that every one of his initiatives abroad will be applauded and emulated as we move forward.
There's a word which has been mentioned, Mr. Murthy, right through the day today, compassionate capitalism. It's a word that's also been associated with you. Define it. What is it for particularly young entrepreneurs that a Ratan Tata is a role model for compassionate capitalism?
Once invited him to inaugurate the Akshay Patra kitchen, which was funded by my wife Sudha. That was the first public function he was accepting after he retired from Tata Sons. He came to Hubli. He stayed there for 2.5 days, and he participated in every function. He interacted with youngsters, with the mature people, with the rich and the not so rich, with the bureaucrats, with the ministers, everybody. And my co-brother, Dr. Deshpande, was also there. And I believe then he did support Akshay Patra after that. So that was a lesson for me in humility, a lesson in compassionate capitalism, a lesson in how the mighty can indeed have a part of their heart reserved for the not so fortunate ones.
Mr. Murthy, if in conclusion, if there is one leadership lesson that you think Ratan Tata gave you, or perhaps what is that one leadership lesson that you think Ratan Tata's life represents?
Based on personal interactions, I would say that he transcended the financial status, official power, intelligence, and other qualities in interacting in the same way with everybody that wanted to interact with him. That, I think, is a rare quality. I have met hundreds of CEOs all over the world, I would say, very, very large CEOs. But he did demonstrate every time, not just once, that he transcended these artificial barriers that we create amongst ourselves to belong to certain clubs or certain groups. That, I think, was his strength. And that's what I would say, that's what I learned from him. That's what we all owe it to him.
Narayan Murthy speaking to me on Ratan Tata earlier today. Let's now go live to our guests, all of whom have known Ratan Tata in various forms over the years. Dr. Niranjan Hiranandani is founder and chairman of Hiranandani Group, so was closely involved with Ratan Tata at various Mumbai business groupings. Gurcharan Das, author, former CEO, Procter & Gamble, has tracked Indian business for decades. And Suman Sinha, founder, chairman and CEO of Renew, who once was a TAS management trainee, Tata Administrative Service management trainee. And let me start with the young TAS management trainee. What did Ratan Tata represent for an entire generation of young entrepreneurs like yourself, who in the 21st century are carving out new niches? What does he represent? What does he embody?
Well, first of all, Rajdeep, I would say that, I first met Mr. Tata when I was a young, impressionable MBA student back in actually, I don't even want to say how long ago it was, but it was actually 1989. And we'd gone to this very imposing Bombay house to get, interviewed by him and, of course, others. And then we'd gone for lunch at the Taj, and, he was there at my table, and he was this very suave, polished gentleman who we knew was taking over the Tata Group. He was, in fact, just transitioning into taking on the leadership from JRD at the time. And, for us, he was in some ways a real role model, because he was somebody who was there right at the top of corporate India, and was at that time relatively, of course, a lot younger, as were the rest of us as well. And so in that sense, he was somebody that we all looked up to and aspired to. Now, fast forward many, many decades, and what Mr. Tata represented to all of us in corporate India, in a way, was, how to take the long view, how to really build businesses for the long term, and how to, in some ways, not focus only on value creation and the stock markets, but really do things that made sense for the country, and that really focused on long-term value creation for all stakeholders, not just shareholders. And I think he had a very different perspective. He was a person who was willing to invest in creating new businesses, invest in acquiring very large businesses overseas, but also in creating brand new products like the Nano and so on, which required a lot of courage and so on. So I think that sense of doing the right thing at the right time, with the interests of all the stakeholders at heart, and with a view to nation building, is something I think that all of us in some ways aspire, sort of learn from him. And then doing so with the right set of values, because I think he embodied in some ways values that are also, it's very middle class, but also very, very aspirational, full of integrity and so on. So I think from that standpoint, he was somebody that I think everybody in corporate India looked up to.
Niranjan Hiranandani, any personal memory of interacting with Ratan Tata that stands out for you?
I think too many of the ideas which stood out, but I think the thought process of the humility of the person, the humbleness of the person, the kindness of the person, the kind of grounded mind that he always had at all the meetings that he had with us is something is exceptional. A man who achieves so much industrial progress, business, hotels, TCS, Chorus, Land Rover. And when you meet him, he feels like any ordinary person. Never had airs on a single occasion of any possible meeting. Humbleness and humility par excellence, I think, stands out in all ways and thought. The second, Rajdeep, I believe, is his ethical values. I think the ethical thought process that he had is something which probably the Tata Group already had, but he took it to the next level. He believed that that was the principle with which he did the businesses, and I don't think he compromised that at any point of time whatsoever. But the other part of Mr. Ratan Tata is even more beautiful, which is his humanity and empathy for people, and his humanity and empathy for even dogs. I think that stands out, something which I haven't seen, Rajdeep, in anybody anywhere in the world. I'm going to share a short story, if I may.
Go ahead.
He was invited in 2018 by Prince Philip to be awarded for the charitable work that Tata Group did and the industry which was brought into UK. And he was invited over there. At the last moment, the trip was cancelled by Mr. Ratan Tata. There was a big inquiry. Is he unwell? What has happened? Why is he not coming for such a thing? And he was very keen to get the award. He was very happy to receive it. But they found out that his dog, his dear dog, was unwell. And hence he cancelled going to Buckingham Palace in London to get an award from Prince Philip because his dog is unwell and he cannot leave his dog. You know, we don't care for our siblings, we don't care for our parents. And here, look at the empathy that he shows even for his dear dog. And this is something which indicates that, you know, the fire in the belly for business I've seen in many people, maybe even stronger than Mr. Ratan Tata.
Right.
And ethical values, very few. But this part of empathy, almost none. So I think there's too much to say about Mr. Ratan Tata, and this is just a little bit of a tip of the iceberg that I'm relating.
Sure, and that was a lifetime achievement award that he was to get. I must tell our viewers, Niranjan Hiranandani, Ratan Tata and I have a common thread, which is we went to the same school. We won't tell you which years we went, but it was Campion in South Mumbai, and we'd like to believe that that had something to do, perhaps the school, with Ratan Tata. But Gurcharan Das, purely on an arc of Indian business. There's the business houses pre-91 and post-91, and Ratan Tata seemed to bridge that divide. He actually didn't even become a part of the Bombay Club, which was resisting, in a way, economic liberalization. Instead, eventually embraced it and built virtually Tata's as a very new company for the 21st century.
You know, my own personal experience of Ratan Tata is similar to what the other speakers have talked about. It was brief but memorable. I was on the board of one of the Tata companies, and we were having a board meeting chaired by Freddie Mehta in Bombay House. Into that meeting was invited a young man who was only identified as Ratan. And what struck me now is, what I remember now is that there was no indication. He was such a modest person with no sense of being a Tata. And 15 minutes after the meeting started, a dog came into the meeting as though it was the most natural thing in the world. We all tried to ignore this fact, and the dog, without any nuisance or any fuss, went and sat down by the chair of Ratan Tata. Later, I discovered that it was one of the strays that Ratan had picked up near his office, and he was keeping him in his office for the time being. So that particular incident really illustrates that the wonderful human qualities that Ratan had. But what I mourn most of all about his passing away is that he was also the conscience keeper of India Incorporated. In other words, as a member of the Tata family, the Tata institution of companies, the $165 billion conglomerate, all of us Indians have admired its commitment to philanthropy, its commitment to integrity, to professionalism. And really, that is really what makes Tatas very, very special. And so, as much as it's one human being, but it is also the institution that we are remembering today, the conscience keeper of India Incorporated.
You know, you're calling him the conscience keeper of India Incorporated, but Sumant Sinha, in a way, the question I also posed to Gurcharan Das, that he actually transcends the pre-1991 Tatas was of JRD Tata, identified with JRD Tata. The post-91 will be associated with Ratan Tata, and dare I say in recent times with Mr. Chandrasekharan as well. But the ability to think out of the box, to think new, to also be emotional, make sure that Air India remained within the Tata family in a way, clearly suggested that Ratan Tata wanted to prepare Tatas for a new India.
And really, I think that, it's when JRD passed away in 91 and Ratan took over, there couldn't have been a better time. He was lucky. India was, the liberalization had liberated the country, and the opportunities was there before him. And of course, as we know, he gradually took advantage of it. And in what we used to call in those days reverse colonialism, he went one after the other, buying Tetley tea and buying Land Rover, Jaguar, and then Chorus. So this really made us young managers feel good that finally the things were going in the right direction.
Let me get a quick word in, Gunjan. I'm just going to get a quick word in.
The most.
I've got a lot of, just a quick word from you, Niranjan Hiranandani. I know you've got to leave very quickly. Your favorite Ratan Tata memory. You told us one about the dog. Any other memory that stands out?
A couple of months ago, he contacted and sent me a message saying that he wants to talk to me about something. And we met up, and he suggested that he wanted to do a Tata Parkinson Foundation. So, and he invited me to come and be a part of that trust board as a trustee, along with him chairing. Now, at the age of 86, him not keeping well, him himself afflicted by Parkinson, he knew at some discussion my father had been afflicted by Parkinson. He invited me and invited the hospital for the purposes of participating into finding out to do research on Parkinson. This is as late as 1st of August 2024, Rajdeep. Can you imagine a man at this age and time who should be worried about his own sickness and health starts thinking about what can I do for the world? I am afflicted by Parkinson. Can I do something and set up a research ball rolling, which will then cure or take care of future people who have Parkinson in the country? So forget the cancer and other things which the Tata Trusts have been doing for so long.
Right.
Even as late as 1st August 2024, he started this trust, and I feel proud and happy to be a part of that organization. I cannot tell you a better story than that for a man at 86, ailing, not keeping well, to be able to start this. It's unbelievable.
And therefore, Suman Sinha, for your generation of entrepreneurs, what's the one message that you will carry from the life of Ratan Tata, Suman?
My takeaway from his life and his many contributions, and as has been said, his humanity and his humility, both, is you have to stay grounded. You have to stay grounded. You have to build businesses for the long term, and you have to focus on all your stakeholders and really not focus on just short-term issues. You just have to make sure that you build a business in the right way with the right set of ethical values. I think all of those are very important, and it's not very straightforward to do that, in the current context necessarily. So I think just keeping those messages from his life in mind, I think, is very critical.
Okay, let me leave it there. Suman Sinha, Gurcharan Das, Niranjan Hiranandani for paying those fulsome tributes. I appreciate all of you joining me. I want to, since we've spoken so much about ethics, turn to Mukund Rajan, former Chief Ethics Officer, Tata Group. He's worked with the Tatas for more than 2 decades and closely with Ratan Tata. Thanks very much, Mukund, for joining me. Your memories at the very outset of Ratan Tata on this very sad day.
I think, first of all, a very fine human being, very unlike the caricatures that you would have had in the 1980s and 1990s, were a typical Indian business person. He was somebody who was extremely articulate, very well read, very exposed to international trends, and yet a thorough gentleman in India, somebody who would never throw his weight around, who would treat the peons in Bombay House just as well as he would treat senior corporate leaders, somebody who insisted on carrying his own bags at the airports, rejected any semblance of entourage around him, very down-to-earth human being. And at the same time, a fantastic business person. He did the things that were so necessary for the Tatas. He took over in 91, soon after liberalization, and it was very critical in that decade to prepare the Tata Group to take on competition, both domestic competition as well as the entry of international companies that are coming to the Indian market. And once he had cemented the ability of Indian companies in Tata's to really compete, he then encouraged them to go overseas in the next 10 years of his chairmanship. And that saw tremendous growth of the Tata Group from a $10 billion group that was largely Indian to a $100 billion group that had made a name all across the world by the time he retired in 2012. So I think both as a human being and as somebody who was a role model, I think, for business persons around the world, I had this fantastic privilege of having worked closely with him.
You just mentioned a fantastic human being, not just an industrialist. Is that something that sort of makes him a cut above the rest? Even during 26/11, the way he treated the employees at the Taj after that horrific terror attack was truly very, very special, wasn't it?
Absolutely. He really felt for people. Even when you think about the corporate purpose statement that he crafted in the 1990s for the Tata Group, which holds true to this day, it is about improving the quality of life of the communities we serve. And that was something he felt passionately about. He felt that if you're in business, there has to be something that you do to really improve the lot of people around you. You cannot have a successful enterprise in a sea of poverty. And he was a nationalist at one level. If you think about all the big projects he undertook, whether it was designing and building the first Indian passenger car, the Tata Indica, then later on the vision to create the lowest cost vehicle in the world, the Tata Nano. These are all projects meant to bring mobility to the Indian customer. And he really felt that Tatas were in a special place with the capability to really do these things for communities right to the bottom of the pyramid in India. Similarly, his work at the Tata Charities as chairman of India's largest charities, the Tata Trusts, enormous amount of good work that these charities are able to do. There are very few non-profits, I would dare say, in this country of any note, which have not at some point or the other received grants from the Tata Trusts. And he really tried to make the companies and the trust work seamlessly together, something that we often saw in action when you had natural disasters and the Tata Group really pitched in to help communities that had been disrupted by floods, by earthquakes, and so on. So somebody who was passionate about the way in which business could really be a transformative power and a power for good.
Any personal memories, your interactions with him in the boardroom, outside, a piece of advice that he gave you on leadership?
Well, the very first interview, in a sense, to join his office that I had with him, I had a master's and a doctorate, but in social sciences. I did not have an MBA. And I remember telling him, Mr. Tata, are you sure that I will be able to support you well in your office? I was to start as his executive assistant and eventually became his principal staff officer. And I said, I don't have an MBA. Is that going to be a problem for you? And he said, Mukund, the only thing you need to succeed in the corporate world is good common sense. And that's something I repeat so many times to youngsters these days, that it's not all about what you're taught in classrooms. There's so much you can learn by doing, but obviously you need a boss with empathy, somebody who's going to coach and guide you and invest in you. And that's something that Ratan Tata is always able and willing to do. He really enjoyed being with young people. And I think it's also had something to do with the fact that he was a very young person, in a sense, in the boardroom of Tata Sons when he took charge of the Tata Group. All his peers around the table were people who were 2 and 3 decades older than him. And I think that made him quite sensitive and conscious about the fact that young people need to always be supported. And later in life, of course, we all know the huge hand he's had in supporting many entrepreneurs and very young startups of this country. So a remarkable person and somebody that one was very fortunate to know.
You know, of course, you cannot take away Ratan from the Parsi in him. Was there ever any good old Parsi humor you were treated to every now and then, or some Parsi food? Of course, the great love for dogs that everyone is talking about. Something distinctive that you had experienced when you were with him?
All of that. And I think the sense of humor is the one that one really remembers him the most for. You saw a lot of that, very evident, particularly in the 1990s. Sadly, as he sort of grew older and became, as I said, the senior statesman in the boardroom, some of those jokes would sort of start vanishing from his interactions with people. But he always had the sense of humor. I think that was one critical element in keeping you sane in the kind of tension-filled job that the chairman of India's largest group is sort of prosecuting responsibilities for. One episode I can very quickly recount, sitting at the boardroom surrounded by some of the most eminent people in India. One of these was the person who built the NCPA infrastructure that we all cherish these days, Jamshed Baba. Baba had this habit of slipping off his shoes under the boardroom table. And Mr. Tata, spotting this at one meeting, slowly and conveniently sort of kicked those shoes sideways and then pushed them aside to the end of the boardroom table, which Baba didn't notice. At the end of the meeting, as all the directors are filing out, Mr. Baba gets up and suddenly discovers there are no shoes. And Mr. Tata, who had sort of obviously engineered this, smiling, chuckling with some of his directors. I mean, that is what the man was capable of. So somebody who could have a wicked sense of humor, but ultimately a heart of gold beneath all of it.
Wicked sense of humor at times, but a heart of gold above all else. Mukund Rajan, for sharing some of those memories of you while you were at Tata's. I appreciate you joining me too. Now remember, Ratan Tata was the quintessential Mumbaikar, some would say, and of course South Mumbaikar, and therefore I've got Shobha De, chronicler of Mumbai, novelist, columnist, joining me. Shobha, any special memory today that you of Ratan Tata you would like to share with us?
Well, I have the most incredible and affectionate and loving memories of a wonderful, wonderful man. We happen to live in the same area of Mumbai, which is South Mumbai, and pretty close to one another's homes. And over the last 40 or 45 years, I used to run into him frequently. I can't claim to be his close friend or a great and good anything associate. But all I know is that he represented the spirit of Mumbai at its best. He was open-minded, progressive, approachable, normal, not at all aloof, not at all standoffish. There was nothing but understated elegance, charm, and grace in every interaction of his. I was lucky enough to see him in different situations, social and otherwise, and he was unfailingly polite to each and every person he met. He made everyone feel special, and he showed the same amount of respect, no matter who it was. So the memories are many, and I just feel I was so privileged to live in the same city that created a Ratan Tata and to have met him on so many different occasions, especially during some of his absolutely shining hours, like during the terror attacks, 26/11, where he was the superhero of not just Mumbai, but of India itself.
You know, you just mentioned the 26/11 terror attack, and that stands out for me also. Everyone remembering how he stood outside the hotel during the attacks, how he took care of the families of the employees affected by the attack. That really stood out, didn't it?
He has been exemplary with employees and staff members, and including people on the fringes of his social life, because of his acts of kindness and compassion, and the fact that he had really such a big heart and such a great vision. He knew he represented brand Tata. He knew what that meant. He knew the weights that was attached to that brand, and he never let anyone down. Least of all, the people in his organization and the people who had sacrificed their lives, who had actually lost their lives in that hotel. He was there steadfastly through the crisis and after, assuring their families to this day of his support and his complete and total understanding of the trauma that they had endured. That said a lot about him as a man and as a leader. We respect him for that.
You know, did he also in a way reflect that unique Mumbai, South Mumbai cosmopolitanism? A Parsi with friends across communities, across income groups. He seemed to have this easy manner. Some believe that entire understated manner is fading away. He represented the good old-fashioned values, didn't he, of a cosmopolitan India?
Absolutely. He was old world in the best possible way, and you're so right. He represented cosmopolitanism a la Mumbai in a way that one finds so lacking in today's Novarish. Those who are aspiring to be empire builders, well, good luck to them, but it takes much more than just money to make that cut. And Ratan certainly showed his class at every point in his life. From a young man growing up in Mumbai as a cathedral boy, campion boy, later on going off and making himself into what he is and was, the architect of modern India's vision for globalization and beyond. He exemplified Mumbai in its most compassionate, the syncretic culture, the broad-mindedness, the inclusivity, the being just the normal guy who had to be. I think that's something a lot of corporate honchos need to learn from him. You don't have to be sitting in your ivory tower. You don't have to be surrounded by Z category security. You don't have to be anything. You just have to be yourself and show and prove who you are through your good deeds and your work as a leader of an empire.
You know, philanthropy, of course, something that has gone with the Tata name over the years. That, of course, makes Ratan Tata so special. I've seen some very nice, lovely pictures of you with him through the day. Did he tell you something that we need to know? on a day like this? Did he reveal ever a secret mantra for success in life?
Well, I can't really come up with a suitable quotable quote on that. Well, we shared a really warm and wonderful friendship, and I just feel so privileged to have lived in the same city as Ratan Tata, to be a part of that legacy in a small way. And it was a absolute blessing and a pleasure to have known him the way so many of us did. He touched our lives in ways that are very, very hard to chronicle and document in words. He was a man with a huge heart, a big heart, and he made every one of us feel so much a part of his lives, even if we were absolutely on the periphery of his existence. He still made us feel special. And that, I think, and every stray dog in Mumbai and every person who's ever loved a dog will today be remembering Ratan Tata with love for the respect he gave to the strays and to so many other people, just regular people in his life.
You know, in my school group, they're calling him Apno Ratan, our Ratan. It almost seems as if the Parsi community in particular has lost their ultimate iconic figure, someone who was their own star in a way. He was Apno Ratan, wasn't he? Our Ratan.
Absolutely. I feel very proprietorial about it, and I will definitely call him Apro Ratan, someone who was part of Amchi Mumbai, and aren't we blessed to have had him with us for as many years? Truly blessed.
Absolutely. Apno Ratan in Amchi Mumbai and in our India, that really makes him truly, as is being suggested by some, a potential Bharat Ratna. Thank you very much, Shobha Dede, for joining me and sharing your memories on Ratan Tata. Ratan Tata is being mourned by one and all, and he will also be mourned today by canines. That's right, because Ratan Tata's legacy went well beyond business, and his deep love for animals and dogs in particular was a defining part of his life. From opening Taj hotels to stray dogs, to skipping prestigious events for his sick pets, for having a floor in Bombay House for a treatment center for dogs, his compassion for the animals knew no bounds. Which is why we thought, as we remember him today, we should also remember his unwavering kindness to every living being.
Ratan Tata's demise feels like a personal loss to all of us. And he will be remembered not just for the business empire he built, but leaving behind a legacy of philanthropy. Key among other initiatives was Ratan Tata's love for animals. His best friends were his furry companions, and his love translated to animal shelters and hospitals. Ratan Tata even mandated that his popular Taj hotels would always have their doors open to stray dogs and to give them shelter. From his young days to the very end, Ratan Tata was accompanied by his most loyal friends, and he always kept them on priority. Back in 2018, he was to receive a prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award from the British royal family, but he chose to skip the event because one of his dogs fell sick. That one incident speaks volumes of what his pet dogs meant to Ratan Tata. Tata's vision of a full-fledged animal hospital came to life when the small animal hospital was inaugurated last year, again showcasing his commitment to providing care for creatures who cannot speak for themselves. It was Ratan Tata's kindness to every living being that truly made him so loved and so missed today. Bureau Report, India Today.
As I said, the stray dogs of Mumbai will be shedding a tear today, as will many, because as the country bids adieu to Ratan Tata, tributes and condolences have poured in right through the day. We end this special with some of those voices that we heard, because over the years, Ratan Tata impacted many people across fields. 86 years. Farewell Ratan, Apno Ratan, our Ratan. Thanks for watching. Bharat Ratna, Ratan Tata. Bye for now. state funeral being given to Ratan Tata.
जीवन ऐसा था कि वहाँ से बहुत कुछ है जो हम सीख सकते हैं।
बहुत ही रेयर किस्म के इंसान और हम सब उनको बेहद मिस करेंगे।
एक बहुत बड़े मन का व्यक्ति आज हमारे बीच से चला गया है। देश के लिए ये बहुत बड़ा नुकसान है।
रतन टाटा जी हमारे में नहीं रहे, ये बहुत ही वेदनादायी दुखद घटना है हमारे लिए।